Welcome to History Distilled, a place where we sample history in small pours. I'm your host, T. Melindle, and today in our journey through the American Revolutionary War, we're going to look at the Battle of Paoli. Time is short, let's jump into it. 1777, General Sir William Howe, the commander-in-chief of British forces in America, had an idea for putting down the rebellion. And that idea was to take Philadelphia. You see, in the 18th century, European military doctrine placed immense value on capturing an enemy's capital city. Philadelphia was not just the seat of the rebellious Continental Congress, it was also the largest city in North America and a vital center for manufacturing supplies needed to wage war. Howe believed that taking the city would be a demoralizing blow to the American cause and force them to surrender. To the astonishment of his superiors in London, Howe ignored orders to support Burgoyne's invasion from Canada. Instead, he chose to invade Pennsylvania by sea. Rather than, say, sailing directly up the Delaware River, he took his massive fleet of over 200 ships, 15,000 soldiers, on a month-long voyage down the Atlantic coast and up the Chesapeake Bay, landing at head of Elk, Maryland in late August. This slow, ponderous approach consumed the entire summer fighting season. It also ensured that Howe's army would be fully committed in Pennsylvania, hundreds of miles away, and utterly unable to assist Burgoyne's army as it marched deeper into the New York wilderness, setting the stage for a catastrophe that would shake the British Empire at a little backwoods place called Saratoga. Meanwhile, General George Washington, watching Howe's movements, positioned his army of about 11,000 Continentals and militia to block the British advance on Philadelphia. He chose his ground at Brandywine Creek, guarding the main fords along the road. On September 11th, the two armies clashed. Howe executed a brilliant flanking maneuver, just as he had done a year earlier at the Battle of Long Island. While a large force of German troops under General von Knyphausen launched a frontal attack at Chadds Ford to distract Washington's attention, Howe and General Charles Cornwallis led the main body of the army on a long march north, crossing the creek at the unguarded fords and swinging down to crush the American right flank. The Americans, taken by surprise, were routed. Yet it was not a total disaster. A stubborn rearguard action by troops under General Nathanael Greene and General Anthony Wayne held off the British pursuit long enough for the bulk of the Continental Army to escape and retreat towards Philadelphia. The defeat, though, was fairly severe, with Washington's army suffering about 1,300 casualties to Britain's 600. The army was bloodied and beaten, but at least it was still intact. After a brief respite, Washington was determined to fight again. On September 16th, the two armies maneuvered for another major battle. The outnumbered Americans formed up for the fight, but just as the first shots were fired, the heavens opened up. A violent storm, a true nor'easter, swept across the battlefield. The torrential rain soaked both armies to the bone. More critically, it ruined their ammunition. In an age of flintlock muskets, wet gunpowder was absolutely useless. Wary of a British bayonet charge against his now unarmed men, Washington had no choice but to break off the engagement. That night, he ordered another retreat, this time moving his army north towards Reading to protect his vital supply lines and re-equip his soldiers with dry ammunition. With the main army moving away to the north, the path to Philadelphia was clear for the British. But Washington was not prepared to cede the initiative entirely. He would detach a force to remain behind the British lines, to shadow their army, harass their movements, and if the opportunity arose, strike a blow against the supply-laden baggage train as it prepared to cross the Schuylkill River. For this perilous mission, Washington turned to one of his most aggressive and trusted commanders, Brigadier General Anthony Wayne. Wayne's division numbered about 2,200 men, a force that included 9 infantry regiments, an artillery company with 4 light cannons, and 3 troops of dragoons. And these were hardened, veteran Continental Army regulars who had fought at Brandywine just days before. Following his orders, Wayne's division shadowed the British Army. On the night of September 19th, he established his camp in a series of fields on a hill between the Paoli and Warren taverns. The location was surrounded on 3 sides by dense woods, which Wayne believed would help conceal his position. You see, Wayne had grown up just a few miles from the campsite. He was on home turf, and he believed his movements had gone entirely unnoticed by the enemy. On the morning of September 19th, he wrote a confident letter to Washington stating, quote, "I believe Howe knows nothing of my situation, as I have taken every precaution to prevent any intelligence getting to him." This confidence, however, was misplaced. Wayne understood the physical terrain, but he critically misjudged the human terrain. While Wayne wrote his confident dispatch, the British already knew exactly where he was, his strength, and his mission. You see, the revolution was in many ways a civil war, and nowhere was this more apparent than in the gathering of intelligence. The British did not need a complex network of clandestine agents. They simply had to listen. Local loyalist farmers and sympathizers eagerly provided General Howe with a constant stream of information. Worse for Wayne, a courier carrying dispatches from Washington had been intercepted, revealing the American plans. British intelligence had even obtained the American password for the night, which was "Here we are, and there they go." Armed with this precise intelligence, General Howe ordered a swift and decisive strike. The man he chose to lead it was Major General Charles Gray, a methodical, experienced, and utterly ruthless officer. Gray was tasked with one objective: to surprise and annihilate Wayne's division. And Gray did not select a random assortment of troops for this task. No, he handpicked an elite force of approximately 1,200 men for the night attack. The Vanguard was the 2nd Light Infantry, a composite battalion made up of the fittest and most aggressive soldiers drawn from 13 different regiments. This was the 18th century equivalent of special forces. They were supported by 2 of the toughest regular units in the British Army, as well as a small detachment of the Light Dragoons. This was a force built for the coming raid. To help guarantee the element of surprise and allow his men to move in total silence, General Gray issued one of the most infamous orders of the war. His men were to remove the flints from their muskets. The attack was to be made with cold steel, the bayonet and the sword alone. The logic behind this command, as later explained by British Major John Andre, was brilliant. Firing a musket in the dark would give away the attacker's position. It would create smoke and confusion, potentially leading to friendly fire incidents. By not firing, the British would remain invisible ghosts in the darkness. They could use the muzzle flashes from the Americans' own panic shots as beacons, pinpointing their targets. At 10 p.m. on the night of September 20th, Gray's force slipped out of the main British camp at Tredyffrin and began its 5-mile march west. To ensure their approach remained a secret, they detained every civilian they encountered on the road, preventing any warning from reaching Wayne's camp. Near the Warren Tavern at the base of the hill where the Americans were camped, they found a local blacksmith, and at the point of a sword, they forced him to act as their guide, leading them along dark wooded paths that led directly to the unsuspecting American perimeter. Just after midnight, the British vanguard reached the edge of the American camp. Using the captured password, "Here we are, and there they go," they were able to approach the American sentries without raising an alarm. The attack itself was swift and silent. The American pickets, posted to guard the camp, were quickly overwhelmed and cut down with bayonets. Even so, a few did manage to fire their muskets into the darkness before they were overtaken by the charging British infantry. Now, popular legend, fueled by patriot propaganda, has long held that the British fell upon the Americans and stabbed them to death as they slept in their huts. The reality, however, is far more complex. Wayne was aware of the possibility of attack. The scattered shots from the pickets provided a few moments of warning. Wayne's troops were not all sleeping, and many of them were already scrambling into formation or had begun an orderly withdrawal when the main British assault crashed into them. They were awake, but they were caught off balance, disorganized, and plunged into, frankly, a nightmare of confusion. With blood-curdling shouts of "Huzzay!" the British stormed the camp in 3 successive waves. The first wave, the elite light infantry, rushed forward. The Americans' own campfires, meant for warmth and cooking, now became an asset for the enemy, for they perfectly silhouetted the Continental soldiers against the night sky, making them easy targets for the unseen attackers charging out of the darkness. As the Americans fired, their muzzle flashes only served to confirm their positions for the second wave, the 44th Regiment, who surged forward with bayonets. They were followed by the third wave, 42nd Highlanders, along with their saber-wielding dragoons. They swept across the field, cutting down anyone who tried to flee. Panic seized the American division. The escape was also hampered by a cascade of minor failures that became nearly catastrophic under the immense pressure being put on by the British. You see, their sturdy farm fences that crisscrossed the encampment should have been a minor obstacle, but instead they became deadly barriers in the dark, creating bottlenecks of terrified men. At one crucial gap in the fence, a disabled cannon overturned, completely blocking the main avenue escape for several agonizing minutes. The stalled column of American soldiers became a perfect target for the relentless bayonet charge. Amidst this chaos, Wayne and his officers fought desperately to rally their men. They did manage to form a hasty rearguard, providing enough covering fire to allow the division's 4 cannons, most of its supply wagons, to be saved. Even so, the retreat devolved into a confused rout westward, with the British light infantry pursuing the fleeing Americans for nearly 2 miles. The storm of steel had lasted little more than an hour, but it utterly shattered an American division. The casualty figures were completely one-sided. While the British suffered a mere 4 killed and 7 wounded, Wayne's division lost at least 272 men, 53 confirmed killed, well over 100 wounded, and 71 taken prisoner. The lopsided numbers and the nature of the wounds fueled American outrage, and survivors' accounts painted a gruesome picture of British brutality. Lieutenant Colonel Adam Hubley wrote that, quote, "I with my own eyes see them cut and hack some of our poor men to pieces after they had fallen in their hands, and scarcely shew the least mercy to any." One of the most barbaric stories, repeated in multiple accounts, was of a single American soldier found with 46 separate bayonet wounds, suggesting he had been surrounded and stabbed repeatedly after he was already down. Which brings us to the central controversy of this engagement. Was Paoli a legitimate raid, or was it a massacre? From a purely military standpoint, it was a masterful surprise attack, brilliantly planned, flawlessly executed by Gray. It achieved its objective with minimal losses. However, for the Americans, the combination of a nighttime attack, the exclusive use of the bayonet, and the alleged refusal to grant quarter to surrendering men transformed the engagement into a massacre. The British countered these claims by pointing to the 71 prisoners they took, arguing that this fact alone refuted any official no-quarter policy. So, was it a massacre, or was it a legitimate battle raid? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Regardless, Wayne's division was shattered and driven from the field, and it was the last significant American force west of the Schuylkill River. The road to Philadelphia was now wide open. General Howe had deftly outmaneuvered Washington's main army. On September 26, 1777, he marched his troops into the American capital unopposed. The British flag was raised over the largest city in America. But it wasn't all grim for the Patriots. The Battle of Paoli gave the Patriots a lift in one key respect. It wasn't strategic, it was propaganda. You see, the Patriots were masters of the day's media. The British simply couldn't compete with the Patriots in the media. As such, the Patriots were able to amplify the story of this massacre. It spread like wildfire through the colonies. The brutal No-Flint attack galvanized American resolve. It crystallized a deep-seated hatred for the enemy. And it gave the soldiers a new, potent rallying cry: remember Paoli. The Patriots were able to turn this shocking defeat into a national rallying cry, one that would help sustain them in the coming months. I hope you enjoyed this look at the Battle of Paoli. If you found this video interesting or learned something new, please consider subscribing and hitting the like button. It truly helps the channel grow and allows me to make more videos like this one. Again, thanks for watching, and as always, have a great day if you want to.